With the Iktomi stories, Iktomi is more like a representation of emotional unhealthiness. And in Lakota belief, you cannot develop spiritually until you're emotionally healthy. You cannot develop spiritually until you are emotionally healthy. So a lot of people today are living in a dualistic way, and that means they're emotionally unhealthy. But they go to ceremonies and they try to become really spiritual, but their relationships often fail because they're emotionally unhealthy, especially if there's a lot of them, where they're just one partner after the other kind of people. Yet they go to ceremonies all the time. And it's really not doing anything. It's like they're in an airplane that goes up into the clouds and gets into this certain current, and they really think they're going a long distance. Then when they come out of the cloud, they realize they're still in the same place. See, I have some friends who are pilots. I learned this from them, that there's a certain kind of a current, an air current, a wind current, that you have to be aware of that when you're flying. And so you go up into the clouds and you don't see where you're going, and you really think you're traveling far, yeah? But you come out of the cloud and it turns out you didn't even go anywhere. You basically just stood still. Because you're in that current, you were flying against the current. And so you really weren't going anywhere. But when you fly with the current, you can really travel far places in a very short amount of time. So these are some things that I learned from some pilot friends. But that's how it is when you're emotionally unhealthy. If you go to lots of ceremonies, or you go to church all the time, or whatever your belief system is, you're not really developing spiritually as long as you're emotionally unhealthy. And when you believe in good versus evil, guess what? You're emotionally unhealthy. Because when you're emotionally healthy, you realize that good versus evil doesn't exist. That's an illusion that was created by man to control things that he doesn't understand. And to control women, because he was afraid of the power of a woman's passion. So they create these things like good versus evil to control the women. That's really deep emotional unhealthiness. So that's Iktomi. He's a representation of emotional unhealthiness. He's dualistic. Here's a small story. This is one when the animals are on the earth, and he goes to one group of animals and he says, "Hey, those animals over there, they said you guys are really dumb and you're really ugly." And so they said, "What?" So they start getting mad at the other animals. See, they don't know who Iktomi is. See, Iktomi just now became Iktomi. So they don't realize that he's tricking them. They think he's telling the truth. They think he's a nice guy, because he comes to them all friendly and smiling. And so this first group of animals gets mad at that other group. Then Iktomi goes to the other group and he says, "Hey, did you see those animals over there? They said that your guys are really dumb and you're ugly." So then that group gets mad. Then Iktomi goes to a third group, then a fourth group, and until he hits all the animals, telling each group that another group thinks they're ugly and dumb. Next thing you know, all these animals start warring with each other. And that's how we got the food cycle. It's just crazy, huh? So, see, this is the kind of character he is. that he really is like a used car salesman or an insurance salesman. He tells you, geez, you're a cool guy, you're smart, and you're just wonderful, and you make good decisions, and I got this deal for you that's going to help you and for the rest of your life. Like that. That's Iktomi. He can really present himself as a nice, friendly man who is on your side. He's setting you up. He's buttering you up, so to speak. That when you least expect it, he pulls the rug out from your feet and tricks you. Yeah? Puts you in a trap. That's how he is. So, when people are dualistic, this is how they are. They're like Iktomi. They do this kind of thing to make trouble or to steal something from somebody. They use deception. This is Iktomi. And like I said, he can come in disguise and really just be like full of confidence, and he's gonna tell you, yeah, you're doing everything right. No, and your life is correct. He really is building you up because he's gonna knock you down. He's gonna pretend to be your best friend. And then when you least expect it, then he's gonna stab you in the back kind of situation. That's how he is. So lots of these stories are like that. They have plots that are like that. And sometimes the results are vicious. They're not always funny stories. A lot of them are funny, but sometimes they're not. But they're supposed to teach you something. And when you understand duality, then you see a deeper meaning in the story. Then you learn how duality works. And that's when you're really becoming enlightened. Now, enlightened doesn't mean you're better, okay? Enlightened means you become a servant to the people. See, in the dualistic world, when people define enlightened, they think that, oh, he's a master. See, those are all dualistic terms. Those are putting people above others. This is violating humility. That's a natural law, humility. So, in the real world, enlightenment means you become a servant to others. It's important to remember. So when you see the deeper level or the deeper meaning in these Iktomi stories, then you really understand lots of things. Okay, I'm going to an Iktomi story, a vicious one. And from there, you'll be able to see what needs to be learned from it. So this one's not going to be a funny one, but it's going to be vicious. This could qualify as a Halloween story. I couldn't tell it during Halloween though, yeah, because that's not the time to tell these stories. In this story, there's some women that are picking choke cherries. And this usually happens around end of July, beginning of August. Choke cherries are mostly in North America. I don't think they grow anywhere else in this world. They're kind of a dark purple, really bittersweet cherry. They really taste good, yeah? And they're like in clumps. They look like miniature grapes when you see them on the choke cherry trees. When you see them when they're all ripe and you just want to pig out, yeah? You have to be careful because if you eat too many, you might get sick. It's nice though, yeah. It's really choke cherries. It's lots of good memories eating choke cherries from when I was a kid. So these ladies were picking choke cherries. The sun was setting and soon it was dusk. And on that particular evening, the air was in such a condition that the red in the sky looked just bright. Yeah, because you know how that is. Yes, it's really pretty when you see something like that. So Iktomi was walking by and he noticed that the women were looking at the sky. And where they were is kind of dark, so they didn't really recognize him. And Iktomi appeared to them as a nice man. He's in disguise again. And so he said, yeah, over there, there's some really, really big, juicy cherries. And they're so juicy that when the sun hits them, it's lighting up the sky. That's why it's so red. And he was really a nice looking, and he had a nice voice, so they thought him, wow. He said, yeah, I just came from there. He said, I had some. They really taste good, he said. So the women were like, geez, we should have went over there. So this nice man says, why don't you go ahead and go over there? He said, I'll take care of your kids, because they had their children there, their babies. And so they said, okay. So they grabbed their bags and they went west. And the further west they went, the further this red sky was going, until suddenly it was dark. And they didn't know where they were. They went so far that they didn't know where they were. So they decided they didn't want to get lost, so they just made camp right there. And they went to sleep, and as soon as it was sunlight, they went back to their group. And they saw this nice man sitting there. He made a soup, and he was stirring it. And so the women said, yeah, we couldn't find those cherries. They said, it must be way over there. So we just gave up and turned around. So Iktomi said, well, that's too bad. He said, well, but I made a soup, he said, because I know that you're probably hungry and thirsty and stuff, and we want to drink something. So he said, I made you some soup, and I have some cherry juice, he said. So they thought, wow, he's a good guy, yeah? So they started eating the soup, and they were eating the meat, and they were thinking, what kind of meat is this? And they were drinking the juice. And here they saw one of the women, as she took the cup away from her mouth, some of that juice went down her chin. And another lady said, geez, that really looks like blood. And they started laughing. And after they got done eating their meal, they were going to go back to their camp. And then they realized, hey, where's our children? And so they were looking, and they were looking for that man, and here he was gone. And they were like, oh no, where's our children? So they were looking around, and then Iktomi came again. But this time, he looked like his regular self. He wasn't in disguise. And he said to these women, he said, what are you guys looking for? And he said, we're looking for our children. He said, this nice man said he would watch him while we went looking for cherries, and we got lost, so we spent the night in the wilderness, and now we just came back, and he made us a soup, and we ate that. And now some of the women started to get sick in the stomach, and they were falling on the ground one by one, and they were holding their stomachs. And Iktomi said, look at me. So as these women looked at him, he transformed into that nice-looking man. And then they realized that they were tricked, that this was Iktomi. And he said, this is what happens when you don't put your children first. When you don't put your children as the top priority, this is what happens. You didn't even care for your children, he said. A stranger came walking to you, and just because he looked nice and sounded nice, you trusted him right away. You didn't even know who he was. And then you just left your children with a stranger. You walked away, chasing after an illusion. So there's no cherries over there. Yet you believe that man. There's no cherries. That's the way the sky is. So you were chasing after an illusion. At the same time, you neglected your own children. That's what you ate, he said. So the women started to try to throw up what they ate because they just learned that they ate their own babies. And the juice was the blood of the babies that they drank. And so the women, some of them died because of this. Then he emptied the soup on the ground. He said, see, look, there's their bones. And you saw these baby skeletons falling on the ground. And some of these women, they went crazy. They went crazy. One of them got her knife and started stabbing herself in the stomach until she bled to death. Then he walked away. See, this is a vicious one. This story was not funny. It was a vicious one. And that's telling mothers that don't be choosing other things over your own children. Don't be choosing foolish things above your own children. That these women were so vain that they did not consider their children important. They did not put their children as the number one priority. They put their own vanity as the number one priority. And for this, they lost their children and went crazy. It's a very powerful story. You look at the world today, like sometimes when I go walking down the street or something like that, a lot of times I'll see these young Turkish mothers, probably 16, maybe even 13 years old. They're teenage mothers. And they're walking down the street, talking on their cell phone or texting. And their little kid is just walking about 3 meters or 10 feet behind. She don't even care. Anybody could walk up and just steal that kid. They don't even care. What's more important to them is their smartphone. Texting people, listening to MP3s. They have headphones on, listening to MP3s and texting with their friends. Meanwhile, their little daughter or their little son, who's just barely walking, is about 10 feet behind them or 3 meters behind them. I don't even care. This is an example of the women in this story. And same thing happens on the reservation. When I used to live on the reservation, I saw that all the time. Young mothers walking down the street, their daughter or son is just barely walking, and yet that kid is way back there. And the mom is just talking to her friend or on the cell phone or whatever. Then she stops and turns around and sees her kid way back there. And she gets mad at the kid. Hurry up, get over here, you little shit. You fucking bastard. This is a mother saying this to her own child. I witnessed that so many times on the reservation with teenage mothers cussing out their own children. About 2 years ago, there was a Lakota lady. She was about 23 years old. And her boyfriend, I think, was 21 or something. She was older than him. And she had 3 children. And the youngest one was a year and a half. And he was living with his father, who was a different man, on the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation. And this girl was from the Cheyenne River Sioux Reservation. And she fought for custody of her son. And she won. And the father and his family were devastated because they were taking good care of this little boy. But the mother won in court. So they had no choice but to let this little boy go live with his mom. And as a result, he didn't really know who his mother was. So he was crying all the time. And he was always crying for his dad and his grandma. And she couldn't take it anymore. So she started slamming him around. And then one day he was walking around with a very, very dirty diaper, just full of shit. And she was on her cell phone. And he was crying and stuff. So she went into the room where he was and really cussed him out. You shut the fuck up, you little shit, she said to her own baby boy. And she saw that the shit was starting to overflow from his diaper. She really got mad. So she told her friend, hold on, I have to change this little shit's diaper, she said. Then she took the diaper off and cleaned him up, just vigorously, just kind of jerking him around. Then she put a clean diaper on him. Then she went into the other room. This is her story. She went into the other room. And she came back. This baby, somehow he put the dirty diaper that was full of shit, he put it over himself. So now his head was covered in shit. So she really got mad and kicked him. From his back, she kicked him really hard. And his body went smashing into the TV stand. Then the TV fell off and fell on top of him. He wasn't responding. Meanwhile, her boyfriend was sleeping in another room. So she cleaned the baby up and she woke up her boyfriend and said, the accident happened. TV fell on the baby. So they called an ambulance and they came over and they loaded the boy up and took him to the hospital. And he was unresponsive and they flew him by helicopter to Rapid City Hospital. This is a really big hospital and they have a children's unit. It's a really good children's hospital. They're known for their cardiology, heart operations. That's what they're really good at. But they have a really good children's hospital there too. So they flew the baby over there by helicopter. And by the time they arrived at Rapid City, he died. So they were cleaning him up because he still had shit all over himself. They were cleaning him up and the doctor noticed that there's cigarette burns on this boy's body. And they're fresh. This baby boy had been with his mother for about a month. And there were bones that were broken and they did not heal properly. So then he called authorities and he wanted to do an autopsy to find out what happened to this baby boy. And it turned out that as soon as the boy got into his mother's custody, he was suffering from physical abuse and developed anxiety attacks. Can you imagine that? An 18-month-old baby with anxiety attacks. And both his legs, in certain parts, they were broken in the past. They didn't heal right. And that's probably why he was crying, was because he was in pain all the time. And he was feeling no love at all. He was receiving no love from his own mother. And the doctors found that the boy was kicked from the back, that he must have been kicked into the nightstand, and that he hit the nightstand so hard it knocked him out and did brain injuries. Yeah, it did severe brain injuries. Then the TV fell on him after that and finished him off. And I thought, how could anybody be this way? How can a mother be this way towards her own child that she carried inside her body for 9 months? That's horrible. That's beyond horrible. So they filed criminal charges on her in federal court. Now she's in prison. She's in there for 28 years, which I think is an injustice. So this shows you that a lot of these young mothers, they see their babies as, when they're first born, they treat them like they're pets. Oh, look at how cute mine is. But as soon as that baby gets to be about a year, 2 years old, and they start crying around more and more, now they see it like a burden. And they start treating their kids like shit. How did they get this way? How did they become so damn selfish? I saw this lady's Facebook page, and one of the most disgusting women I've ever seen in my life. All her posts had the word fuck in it. Almost all her pictures had her giving the finger, talking trash against other girls. To me, she was making a fool out of all women. Her priority was herself. And her children were just burdens. They threw the guy in prison too, but they gave him less time because he cooperated and he told things that she did that she didn't want known. So he got less time for telling more about the other things she did, verifying that she burned this little boy, giving him cigarette burns all over his body. He verified that. But for some reason, he was scared of her. You have a abuser-victim relationship here where the woman is the abuser and the man is obviously the victim. He was scared of her for some reason. It's the other children, they don't deserve her. They deserve better. So the father and his family is disgusted. And I think they were suing the social services of South Dakota because the social services of South Dakota were the ones that sided with the mother, even though the mother has a police record. She's been arrested several times. Guess what she was arrested for? Selling drugs. And the social services advised the court to give the baby boy to her. Even though the father had a job, he had income, he came from a good family, and this family loved this boy, but social services sided with the mother, even though she had a criminal record, and placed the boy in the mother's custody. And 1 month later, she kills the boy. So this is an example of women who don't deserve to be called women. She has 3 kids. She killed one of them, her own child. Broke his bones. 2 legs and 1 arm bone she broke. His body was covered in cigarette burns, especially on his back. It's incredible how evil this woman became. How did she become this way? Well, it's too late to blame anybody. The fact is, she killed somebody. And she knowingly abused this baby ever since she got him back in her custody. No wonder the baby developed anxiety attacks. Just a baby with anxiety attacks. I never heard of such a thing until then. So you see, a lot of these girls turn out this way. Sometimes they might have good parents. Sometimes the parents are trying to teach their daughters how to be mothers. They try to teach them how to cook for their children when they have them, but they don't want to learn. Some of these girls even cuss out their own moms. They cuss out their own grandmas. So anytime they get their welfare check, they dump the baby off at their moms or their grandmas, and they go out and get drunk, get pregnant again. They want to get pregnant again because the more children they have, the higher amount of money they get on welfare. See, they're putting their focus on themselves. And that's going to come back around and bite them in the ass. Just like it did with this girl from Shan River Sioux tribe that now she's sitting in prison because she killed her own son. It's hard to understand when you have a daughter and you do your best before they hit puberty, because it's a biological fact that as soon as teenagers hit puberty, part of their brain shuts down. This is why they make really goofy decisions, because it's producing a lot of some kind of hormone. And that's why they don't think too good, and they do really dumb things. But when they turn about 18, 19 years old, this starts to settle, and then they become rational again. So when you have children, you've got to start teaching them life skills as soon as they can understand and before they hit puberty. Then it sticks with them. But if you don't, then they're not going to want to learn because they think they know everything already. So you have to prepare them as good as possible before puberty. But even when you do that, sometimes they still turn out that way because they're developing into young adults and they think that they can do whatever they want with their lives, and then they go ahead and do it, no matter what. They want to impress their friends and relatives. Look at me, I'm a gang girl or I'm a gang guy. And they idolize these Mexican gangs and they learn how to speak Spanish and try to dress like them, and they don't even want to be Indian, and they want to be Mexican. And then they have babies and they see the babies as trophies. They see them as anything but human. And they're not the top priority. They do not put their babies as the top priority. See, this Iktomi story is thousands of years old concerning him tricking these women and saying that, oh, those are really nice looking cherries over there. They're so big and juicy, and they just believed him. They didn't even know who he was, but they just automatically trusted him with their children. They didn't even care. They put their own vanity above their own children, and they went chasing after an illusion. And look at what happened to them. See, the story is teaching the importance of the responsibility of being a mother. And it's applicable today. Because the way these young teenage mothers are doing things is just like the Iktomi story. These young teenage mothers, when they act this way and put their own vanity above their children, they're daughters of Iktomi. That's their society. They're the daughters of Iktomi. You see this all over the world. It's not just among Indians and Turkish people. You see it all over, especially in poverty areas. So that's an example of a vicious story, and it shows that it's applicable today. It's the same thing happens today. In a dualistic world. That's an Iktomi world.
To read more about Lakota Star Knowledge spirituality, you can read my book called Wichocha Otechike. You can see the book cover on the right side of this screen. This book contains the information to what I talk about on my Lakota spirituality videos. To purchase this book, please click below where it says Show More. Clicking on that link will open up the description below, and there you will see a link called To Purchase My Books. As you will see, it's an eBay link. Click on that eBay link, and there you will see the information to get this book. Lila Pila Mayelo. Thank you very much.